Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the fourth of 19 candidate forums for the 2021 general elections in the Cayman Islands, being hosted by the Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce in association with Foster's. My name is Mike Gibbs, and I have the honor of being the current president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I will be asking the questions this evening. I'd like to begin my opening comments by welcoming each of the Savannah candidates, Heather Bodden, Malcolm Eden, and Gina Williams, and thanking them for accepting the Chamber's invitation to participate in this forum. Your willingness to appear on the same platform demonstrates to voters that you take the democratic process seriously and are ready to respond to a series of questions on the top issues as identified by the recent online Chamber survey. More than 400 responses and more than 200 questions have been submitted via the survey, and these will help to frame the questions for this evening's forum. There is certainly not enough time to ask all the questions, but we will do our best to cover the topics that have been identified as the most important to the Cayman Islands and the Savannah constituency. When the Chamber was established in 1965, the goal was to create an organization that supports, promotes, and protects the interests and welfare of its members and the wider community. Being nonpartisan, we have hosted forums every election year since the 1988 election. So for 9 elections, we have provided members of the community with an opportunity to hear from their candidates and educate themselves before Election Day. These forums have taken weeks of planning and preparation, with all the credit going to the hardworking Chamber staff, but would not have been possible without the financial support of our sponsors, Foster's, Affinity, Bodden's Legal and Corporate, and DART. So a big thank you to them. I would also like to extend a wholehearted thanks to our media partners, Cayman Mile Road, Cayman Life TV, Radio Cayman, Government Information Services, and ICCI FM for agreeing to broadcast tonight's forum. It is the first time that we have live streamed the forums on the internet, and we hope that this new format will enable even more people to watch them in the comfort of your home. It is now time to begin this evening's forum. I will therefore turn the proceedings over to Will Pinault, CEO of the Chamber, who will serve as this evening's moderator. He will now explain the rules of the forum and introduce the Savannah candidates.
Good evening, candidates. Rules for tonight's forum are as follows. Each candidate will be asked a series of questions. You'll have 2 minutes to answer if you choose to do so. Each candidate will be allowed to answer the question without interruption and is free to differ with an opinion or position of another candidate during your allotted response time. Candidates should deal solely with the issues, and at the conclusion of the forum, each candidate will be allowed 2.5 minutes to deliver a closing statement. And now it gives me pleasure to introduce tonight's candidates. We'll begin as they were seated in a random selection. Malcolm Eden. Malcolm is married and has 3 children. He's a family-oriented, forward-thinking, results-focused, and driven to make a positive contribution wherever he can. He attended the Joanna Clark Primary School, formerly known as the Savannah Primary School, the Cayman Islands Middle School, and the Cayman Islands High School. He has worked in both public sector and for SEMA, and in the private sector as founder and managing director of the Audiophile Group. He is an active member of our community, including past president of the Clifton Hunter High School PTA, past president of the Rotary Club of Grand Cayman, and he has many years of dedicated service. He has a background in management and finance and has represented Cayman in various capacities for financial services, Rotary, and business development over the past 25 years. He holds a Master's in Business Administration from the University of Manchester, United Kingdom, and a Bachelor of Science in Management and Accounting from the University of the West Indies in Jamaica. Welcome, Malcolm.
Thank you.
Gina Williams. Gina is an expert personal trainer who was one of the pioneering Caymanian business owners of the fitness boom in Cayman. She represented Cayman both locally and internationally as a top 5 competitor in natural bodybuilding and figure competitions. She is also a radio personality with talk shows that focused on health and wellness and women's empowerment. Gina launched Cayman's first Women's Empowerment monthly event group, which hosted women from all over the world and of all ages. She is now a women's empowerment coach with an emphasis on mindset and social media influencer who represents Cayman as a regional vice president and vice president of the Global Events Division of the largest women's empowerment network on social media with over 1 million female followers worldwide. She has a consistent record of helping businesses become profitable through sales and she's also a licensed real estate agent. Gina is a wife with 2 children and an animal lover who adores Cayman. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you.
Heather Bodden's life is characterized by service and dedication to community and country. Born in Georgetown and raised in the Savannah, Newlands area, Heather has committed her life to helping others and working for the betterment of all residents in her district. Heather served as a Boddentown member of the Legislative Assembly from 1995 until 2000. During her tenure in government, she brought the motions for establishing handicap parking and creating a safe house for battered and abused women and children island-wide, which is known as the Crisis Center. She also worked to strengthen the litter laws and contributed to many other important initiatives. In 2006, Heather was awarded the Certificate of Honor by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Most recently, she was awarded the Order of the Caymanians insignia at the 2021 National Heroes Day celebration for her devotion to sustained and selfless volunteer service within the community. I think
you.
viewers know who you are now.
Thank you.
So at this time, we're going to take a short break for our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll begin a series of questions for this evening's forum. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum for the constituency of Savannah. And I'll turn it over to President Mike Gibbs to begin the questioning, and we'll begin with Malcolm Eden.
Thank you, Will, and once again, good evening, candidates.
Good evening.
As well as outlined, Mr. Eden, you will have the first question addressed to you, and we will move down the table from there. First question really is, why have you decided to run for elected office, and what makes you the candidate of choice for the voters of Savannah?
Thank you, Mike. First of all, let me just say thank you to the Chamber for hosting us this evening. It's a valuable part of this election process. Also, I want to say good evening to my constituents, my supporters, and all of the listening public today. I believe that I have a unique mix of qualifications, experience, and background to be the next Member of Parliament for the constituency of Savannah. Savannah is near and dear to my heart. It's where I grew up. It's where my family grew up, and many generations of our family led and participated in the community. My wife has a business there. My children have been to the Savannah Primary School. I attended Savannah Primary School, and I do believe that it is one of the districts that is in need of attention. I think it's one of the areas that may have been overlooked in past constituencies. And I do believe that going forward with my contribution to the community, I can make a significant difference. As mentioned earlier, I have a background in finance. I am a member of the Rotary Club of Grand Cayman. And I'm proud to say that over many years, I've made significant contributions to our community, not just in the constituency of Savannah, but throughout the island as a whole. So I think when we look at it in terms of where we're at for this election process, it will be one of the most important elections, I think, in our island's history. Speaking to members in the community, there's a lot of concern with regards to the cost of living. In particular as well, the newer generation has significant concerns when it comes to their future and their future employment. So I believe with my background, I can make a valuable contribution, and I have fully committed to this process, and I have always been dedicated to service above self. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Williams, if you could answer the same question, please.
I'm running for the District of Savannah because I feel intuitively called by God to do so. My purpose in life is to help others, so I'm not really surprised that I've been called into this position. I also see a lack of empathy and a need for strong female leadership in our country today. Women just offer a different perspective to things, and I think Cayman definitely needs that right now. And I'm also here to inspire other young women to step into their truth and just step out into what they feel is what's right for them. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Barden.
Thank you, Mike. My reason for stepping out in this election is that I've been here before. I've run in the District of Savannah, District of Bordentown before. I was elected in 1995 to 2000. Service to the community is a passion that I dearly, dearly love. I was raised in a home with love and caring and sharing by my grandparents and my parents. They have passed that along to us. Today, I'm happy to say that I'm not the only one that takes the community to heart, but I have 3 sisters, and I still have my mother here, and we are all very dedicated to the community. My record speaks for itself. My door is always open. Having been born and raised in Savannah and Newlands, I know my people, and my people know me. Therefore, I hope to be able to get elected. That way, I will be able to provide a bigger platform for me to do even more for Savannah and for my people.
Thank you. The second question is focused on the local Savannah issues, and Ms. Williams, we'll look to you to answer this first. If elected, what 2 or 3 projects or programs would you like to accomplish for the people of Savannah?
Well, in my door-to-door Christmas card distribution that I was able to do and get to close to 1,200 homes in Savannah, my recommendations for the district is based on their feedback, which is to create a district council for them so that they have visible representation. The number one thing that I heard from them was that they did not see their representative. And I want to provide that for them because being a representative is about listening to the people in your constituency and making sure that they have all the things that they need. The second thing I'd like to implement as a representative of Savannah is enacting further road improvements. There's a lot of flooding in the area. Those are the sort of things that I was told going door to door. Lighting is also an issue in the district. Also police patrolling. They would like to see more of that. The third initiative that I'd like to implement, and again, this is all based on feedback from the Savannah constituents themselves, is the revitalization of the Pedro Castle Community Park. All of those areas definitely are areas of concern for the constituents of Savannah, and those will be the things that I will definitely be looking at doing as soon as I'm elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barden, if you could, over to you to answer the same question, please.
The 3 top issues that I would be considering would be the elderly, and that is to make sure that their better taken care of. They built Cayman, and we now need to take care of them. Healthcare and Seneca needs to revamp the work for our seniors and make it better. The other question, or the other point that I'll be making, is the road safety, which is one that I'm already working with on with the police. Education backed by laws and the support of the community is needed to combat the problem of speeding and reckless driving behaviors. Very often, or more often than ever, we're seeing the young people in our community that's taken to the roads, to the streets, and they're doing so many things that are dangerous on our streets. We're scared for them. We're scared for them losing their lives. They have to have some place to be able to go to know that it's safe for them. The other point is the Savannah Primary School. We've already had some very long-standing relationships with the Savannah School, and we are planning to meet with the teachers, the parents, the principal, and hear their views on the issues that are affecting the schools. Those are my top three.
Thank you. Mr. Eden.
Thank you. The number one issue that I have on my list is the Savannah Primary School. Well, it's now known as the Joanna Clark Primary School. That is the school that I attended, and also my 3 kids attended. In speaking with the stakeholders, what we found is there's a lack of resources for the school. It's desperately in need of a new hall facility, new canteen facilities. There's numerous requirements for support for teachers. Another big issue that we've identified is there's kids with special needs that aren't receiving the support that is required. So the number one issue on my list at the moment is the Savannah Primary School. The second issue that I've identified is the road works that are required. Every evening I sit in traffic for almost 2 hours as we come to the junction by Hearst Road and Shamrock nearby Country Corner. And some of these improvements I think have been on the books for many years, and what we need to do is focus on those areas of the roads so that we alleviate the traffic and the congestion. And also what we find is within some of the districts and some of the neighborhoods within Savannah, there's significant flooding. So there's areas that need to be addressed when it comes to flooding. And in particular, we've seen that they intend to continue some areas of the east-west arterial, and that will just exacerbate the problem of flooding in some areas. The third issue that I had was the creation of incentives for small businesses to be established in the community. I think that would alleviate some of the issues and concerns when it comes to traffic. If government can come on board and create some incentives that would allow businesses to be established in the district and to create as well employment opportunities.
Okay, thank you. Our next question focuses more on national issues, and Ms. Bowden, I would look to you to answer this one first. There are several national issues facing our islands. Please identify 1 or 2 issues that you would champion if elected.
Thank you, Mike. If elected, the first issue that I'm concerned with is women's equality and representation. I think when we all look back at 2017 compared to now, fewer female candidates have now stepped forward. And that, to me, needs to be changed. My other issue would be the community development, and that would be to help those to avoid, our young people that are finding themselves involved with drugs and alcohol, just to make sure that they are offered through the school's extracurriculum and organized sports activities and various charitable organizations to develop our youth and enhance our communities and our country. The other one that would be taken on would be the elderly population, taking better care of our seniors. They built Cayman, and we now need to take care of them.
Thank you. Mr. Eden, same question, please.
Thank you. The number one issue that I had on my list was cost of living and tied together with that is the deterioration in our quality of life. In speaking with many of my constituents, the number one issue and concern was their inability to meet their ongoing requirements. In a lot of cases, individuals' salaries had already been spent before they received it. In a lot of cases, they could not afford health care. In a lot of cases, there were complaints about the cost of utilities. There was also concerns about their ongoing expenses when it comes to general day-to-day grocery shopping. So there are a number of ideas that I have in terms of addressing the cost of living, and I can touch on those a bit further on. But what I just wanted to mention, that one thing that has become abundantly clear is that there has been a deterioration in the quality of life, and that certainly needs to be addressed. The second issue dealt with employment opportunities, and employment opportunities in particular for our youth. In particular, I've met with a lot of the younger generation. They're concerned about their future ability to be employed. They're concerned about opportunities that are not being made available to them. And I think what we need to do is to focus more on vocational service. There's lots of areas that our young people can be engaged in employment, whether that be tilers, carpenters, masons, etc. And the third issue that I had dealt with the environment. That is an area that's near and dear to me. I see the complete disregard for the litter laws that we have, and there's construction going on, which is commendable, but we do need to take into consideration our environment together with the development that we have on the go. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Williams, if you could focus on that same question, please.
Thank you. Since Cayman is moving forward with the human rights, I think the time is very appropriate to push forward for the human rights with families with children that have special abilities. Because of the stigma that is created in our society around children with special abilities, I would love to see there is a lack of inclusion on the island in regard to children with special abilities. And I would like to see that inclusion, obviously, where kids are included, they feel included in all areas of education, recreation, and employment. I feel like the government will definitely be in cooperation with me on such an initiative, seems as though we are moving forward with human rights. And I'll also be looking to the private sector for their support in this initiative as well. The second area of concern for me is cost of living. That's what everyone's talking about. There are definitely areas in which we can improve on that, and I know that that'll be a question that probably we'll have later on that we can go into more detail, but definitely cost of living. The third one for me is maternity leave. Maternity leave should be paternity leave in this country now. Cayman has one of the worst maternity leaves in the world, and I would love to see a complete reform of that area in particular. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question, which we'll address to Mr. Eden, focuses on traffic. What actionable steps would you propose to address the traffic woes from Savannah into Georgetown in the mornings and returning in the evenings? And additionally, would you advocate for a stop sign or traffic light to be placed at the intersection of Hurst Road and the bypass for safety concerns?
Thank you. Traffic is a challenging one. I think over the years we've tried many different ideas, but some of the ideas that I think could make a difference is continuing with the east-west arterial extension. We do need to get that in place, and it will certainly, in my view, alleviate some of the traffic in the afternoon. In the mornings, it gets a little bit more challenging because what you find is that parents have to drop their kids to school, and because of that, they have to be at school at the same time. In my case, we have one child at Clifton Hunter, and we have one in the other direction. So it gets challenging. But some of the things that we can look at are more shift hours. So we can have maybe the school starting at a different time from the workplace. But in order for this to be successful, we need to have a reliable public transportation system. These are some of the measures that I think we can take in the long term, or in the short term, we can implement and we can enhance our public transportation system. We need to build confidence in the public transportation system so that those that want to take the bus can depend on the fact that it will show up at a certain time and that, they will take you to your intended destination. In the longer term, we can look at things like import duties on some of the vehicles, maybe encouraging newer vehicles rather than older vehicles, and also encouraging within some of the areas closer to town the use of bicycles, for example, or motorcycles if it's short commutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Williams, same question.
Could you repeat the question?
It's up on the board there, but I will certainly read it. What actionable steps would you propose to address the traffic woes from Savannah into Georgetown in the mornings and returning in the evenings? Additionally, would you advocate for a stop sign or traffic light to be placed at the intersection of Hurst Road and the bypass for safety concerns?
Well, I think if anything that COVID taught us is that we definitely are able to work from home. And I think that's something that's been proven at this point. So honestly, if there was something positive that came out of COVID, we can take that away from it as a country. And that's a solution right there. I would definitely advocate for a stop sign there at Hurst Road and the bypass for safety, because those measures are important, obviously, to keep, those roads safe. But primarily, I definitely think that the work from home option is something that we have to look at. I know the public transportation system was something as well that can definitely be improved. And I agree that the importation of the cars has to be looked at as well. That is actually an issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barden, if you could look to that question, please.
Thank you, Mike. I see this every day. Thank goodness I work in the Savannah area, so I don't have to beat the traffic, or I don't have to get involved in the traffic delays. But I definitely would suggest that perhaps that some restriction on vehicle importation should be considered. I'm also in agreement that how we worked with COVID back during the several months that people were working from home, that perhaps that changing the work hours, the school hours during the peak traffic issues that we're having, that maybe people can go to work a certain time and children can go to school at a certain time. I think more opportunities for people working from home, the way they did during COVID, should be considered. I also remember when we had the alphabets from A to K that you could be on the road. Maybe we need to consider that again. That worked perfect. But one thing I think we also need to also hope and pray that we can get is a reliable bus transportation system. If we can get that, I think more people would be willing to take that bus service.
Thank you. The next question focuses on something that several of you have already touched on, the cost of living. So this was the top issue in the recent Chamber survey. And so the question would be, and this is for Ms. Williams to answer first, is what specific measures would you recommend to help to reduce or alleviate the cost of living for all residents in the Cayman Islands?
That's such a good question, and thank you very much for that. Definitely minimum wage has to be reviewed. I appreciate that it's been put into place, that Cayman actually has a minimum wage at this point. However, I feel we should be in line with what the UK has as a minimum wage, which is close to $10 at least in the Cayman Islands. We are one of the highest cost of living areas in the entire world, and we have to be more in line with that. I also believe that we need to enact consumer protection, because there's no way to gauge what the level for companies to their profit margins. Basically, they choose their own profit margins, out of the air, basically. So we definitely need to have some kind of consumer protection board in place so that we can definitely control costs, because otherwise it'll just keep going up and up. Importation duties and things like that is not going to be something we can avoid, but we can control cost if there's a consumer protection board or plan that we can look at and gauge what is actually in the marketplace and appropriate for retail businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bodden?
Thank you, Mike. Yes, that is a serious issue right now, the cost of living. I think everybody that I come in contact with has some sad story that they're not able to afford to do this and do that. And because of the pandemic, prices, everything has gone up, and there's just no magic wand at this time. But we can do lots of strategies, and together they can add up. So it is not an easy answer. We live on an island where everything is imported, and this has to be considered carefully.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mr. Eden.
Thank you. That is a good question. What I started doing was looking at the contributing factors for the high, cost of living that affected most of us. Some of the areas that I identified were the fuel costs, which impacts everything from fuel in your cars to, the grocers in the store. One thing that we can do in that regard is look at possibly lowering the government taxes that may apply, because I do know that at least on my utility bill, I've seen a fuel factor. So I think that is one issue that can be addressed. The other area has to do with housing and mortgages in general. Interest rates are relatively low at the moment, but I do believe there are ways that together in partnership with the private sector, with the lending institutions and with government as well, we can look at ways to make the cost of housing more affordable, and with the view of bringing down the cost of mortgages to most families within the islands. And the other issue that I was proposing was to look at the import duties that we put on food items. Some of those items at the moment are considered relatively low duty or close to duty free, but some of those actually do have very high import duties. And food, as we know, is a basic necessity for all of us, I would imagine. So I believe that looking at those three areas, the fuel costs, the cost of mortgages, and also revisiting import duties in certain areas could potentially lower the cost of living.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We've gone through the first 5 questions. We have plenty more questions to go. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back after these brief messages.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back to the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum for Savannah. I'll now turn it back over to President Mike Gibbs, who will continue the questioning.
Thank you, Will. And this next question will be asked first of Ms. Bodden. It's on economic diversification. The question is, financial services continues to come under external pressures and tourism, including the cruise industry, may never return to the levels before the pandemic. What are your views about diversifying the economy, and which areas would you support and encourage?
Could you repeat that?
We're talking about economic diversification, and obviously that the financial services continues to come under external pressures,
Yes.
and tourism may never return to the levels before the pandemic. So what are your views about diversifying the economy, and which areas would you support and encourage?
Okay, thank you. I have no particular expertise in this area, but I will support and defend Cayman and the government in its fight to protect the financial services industry. It is the pillar of our economy, and we cannot allow ourselves to be bullied when we are in fact maintaining high international standards.
Thank you. Mr. Eden.
Thank you. What I do believe is that tourism and financial services will always play a significant role in our economy. But what we can do to diversify that is to focus more on job creation in the alternative energy sector. At the moment, we have a significant reliance on fossil fuels. And as we move away from that, I think we can create more jobs in the area of alternate energy. Most of the homes that are being built are moving towards solar generation. And I think that's an area that we can train our young Caymanians to take up jobs in that area. I attended a presentation recently, and it was highlighted that in North America, that is one of the most significant areas of growth and employment is in the solar sector. Also, I think we can sort of support and enhance the smaller crafts such as arts and our musicians and things of that nature. So I think for those that are focused in that area, we can provide them with the support and guidance that they need. Also, construction is ongoing at the moment. But what we need to do is to train our Caymanians and those that are capable of taking up those jobs to be prepared to take on a role in the construction industry. So those would be the areas that I would focus on to aim to diversify our economy.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
I definitely think that we would probably need to double down on our stayover visitors for the economy to take up the slack for the cruise industry. They've always been the source of the most of the contribution to our economy in the first place. So I think we could definitely look at ways at enhancing that part of the tourism industry. Also, looking within to our own Caymanian people with their own unique set of abilities and entrepreneurial desires, whatever those might be. I think we would definitely could open up the floor to finding out more about what it is that they would like to do and contribute to society in the ways that they want to, because I think there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit out there in the Cayman community, but it's not always encouraged or heard of. And I think that would be a way forward, definitely for the Caymanian people, for us as a people, and definitely for them to have an opportunity to actually contribute to the economy itself. I'm thinking agriculture, arts and craft was a good suggestion as well, but there's lots of other areas in which Caymanian people are very talented, and they can be a positive and economic contribution to our economy when we need to diversify right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be addressed to Mr. Eden first on education. What is your vision for a successful education system in Cayman? What does it look like? What steps can we take to get there? And how will that success be measured?
Thank you. My vision for a successful education system is one where we have complete buy-in from the private sector and the public sector. It's one where we have teachers that are teachers that are recognized for the work and the hard work and appreciation that they do, and one where we have retention of the teachers in the system. What we've found is that over the years, we've lost a lot of the good teachers that we've had, and the new ones that are on board have not been provided with the proper training. So we do need to focus on a framework that we put in place, which is given time to work. Over the past few years, there's been significant changes in the education system. I would also like to see the A-levels brought back into the high schools. For me, when I was going through school, that was a significant advantage to be able to continue on to do A-levels. So I think we need, I would say, a tweaking of the education system. Some areas may need to be looked at in more detail, but certainly we need to tweak the system. Some of the steps that we can take is to provide a curriculum that allows for each child to recognize their potential, because what we've found is that going through the school system, some of them are leaning towards maybe a career in the arts or in another area, but they're not provided with the necessary training and support as they come out of the school system. What we need to be doing is to encouraging or identifying and encouraging those kids so that when they graduate from school, they can go on to jobs that they do find rewarding, and they can build a career of it. And in terms of how we measure it, I think the success will be measured by lower unemployment and the satisfaction of the kids as they find jobs, because at the moment there's a significant part of the population that are unemployed, and a lot of those happen to be the younger kids because they cannot find jobs.
Thank you. Ms. Williams, if you could address the same question.
Well, I think a successful education system in Cayman is something we actually used to have. In fact, we did used to have that. I'm a product of private school here in Cayman, and I recall vividly that the government school system was the elite education in Cayman. It wasn't that long ago, but it's something I vividly remember us kids at the private school saying, you know, the education at the government school is definitely of a high standard. So over the years, I honestly believe that the cost of living has contributed to a lot of the deterioration of the education system. The education system is designated as a free opportunity for Caymanian children to go to school. And I know that parents are out of pocket right now for a lot of different things for their kids going to school. And I would love to see the enforcement of the Constitution where it says that a cost of education for a Caymanian child is supposed to be free. So I feel like if you got to the root of the problem, then you would see that successful education level return to the public school system in the Cayman Islands. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barton, if you could address the question.
Thank you, Mike. To me, education is crucial to the success of our youth. And there is an increasing divergence between the quality of education between our private and public schools. What measures this at this time would I support to correct this imbalance would be an overall concerted effort between government, teachers, parents, and the private sector. And I'm prepared to look at the assessments and find solutions that encompass all areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is focuses on the environment. And Ms. Williams, I'll address this to you first. What do you regard as the highest risk to the Cayman Islands' natural environment, and what measures would you recommend to address this risk?
Thank you. By far, the biggest health risk in our environment right now is Mount Trashmore. The landfill, unfortunately, has a nickname like that we all know it by. Unfortunately, when the cruise ship passengers used to come, they used to take pictures of it when they were here. It's not only an environmental hazard, it's a health hazard for those of us that have to live here day in and day out. Something that's long overdue and has not been dealt with. I recall at the 2019 election, there was supposedly a contract in place back then as well to address what was going to happen, the remediation of it. And by 2018, we were supposed to be able, the public was supposed to be able to see a copy of this contract. None of us ever saw that. And then I understand there is a contract in place again now again, dealing with the landfill. So I think it is important and immediate and imperative at this point that we make sure that we see that something is actually going to be moving forward with the landfill. We as the people make sure that we get a copy of whatever the government has signed. As I understand, there's something signed again, here at election time for the landfill to deal with that. But that is something that absolutely has to be dealt with. And I look forward to seeing whatever contract that is in place so that we can make sure there are actionable steps to remediate this major problem in the environment for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barton.
Right now, littering is something that I really, really have an issue with. And we need to do what we have to do in regards to enforcing the litter laws. I recall my dad in the back when he was alive, that the environment was very, very precious to him. He took it upon himself every day to make sure that litter was collected. If we do not get a hold of what is happening in our country right now with the litter, we're going to look just like Mount Rushmore. And we need to make sure that litter laws are enforced. We need to make sure that people are caught and made an example of. But yes, right now, to me, with the environment, littering is definitely a serious issue.
Thank you. Mr. Eden.
Thank you. For me, it would be the landfill. Without doubt, that is an environmental catastrophe that I think for many decades has been neglected, and it has been allowed to grow out of proportion and significantly is overdue for remediation. One of the things that I would do is to immediately ensure that the contract is signed and finalized and that the capping process is completed. I would also like, in tandem with that, to see the waste to energy facility put in place, because every day we're generating more and more trash. So one thing is to cap it, but then the other issue is what do we do as we create more waste and there's more litter that's being generated throughout the island. So capping it is one thing, but we also need to look at moving towards the waste to energy solution, which I think for an island such as ours is sustainable. And together with that, we do need to enforce our litter laws, because that is a significant concern, and there's no point in us picking up trash. We have Earth Day cleanups and things on an annual basis, but as soon as we can pick something up, there's a complete disregard for the environment, and there's more trash on the roads than when we started.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Our next question will be addressed to Ms. Heather Barton. And is on the future of financial services. It's given that financial services is critical to the island's economy. If elected, how would you respond to the FATF grey listing and the European Union's intention to blacklist us, even though we have met most of their requirements?
I think I probably said something about that earlier, but anyway, given the financial services is critical to the Cayman economy, if elected, I would definitely support and defend Cayman and the government in its fight to protect the financial service industry. It is the pillar of our economy, and we cannot allow ourselves to be bullied when we are in fact maintaining high international standards. So that would be the route that I would take.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Eden.
Financial services is one of those areas that has helped to build the country that we have today, and we do need to defend our financial industry vigorously. One of the things that I would do is to immediately engage with the authorities. I think some of these gray lists and potentially blacklists come about because of misunderstandings. I think we can all agree that the financial services industry in Cayman is very well regulated, and I think that is a story that needs to be told. Based on my experience in the past, the communication from regulator to regulator is quite good, but actually where the breakdown occurs is at the political level. So I do believe that engaging with our counterparts overseas will play a significant role in terms of coming off in as short a period as possible the gray list. And to do that, we will need the support of the private sector as well. We have a number of non-governmental organizations that I think would be beneficial to have with us in that process. But it all begins with dialogue, and if we approach it tactfully, I think we can get off of that grey list in the relatively short term.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
As far as the gray list and the blacklist is concerned, and Cayman Islands as a country, we know this is going to be an ongoing challenge for us. It seems like we're always targeted for, our high level of financial services. So therefore, this is something we're going to have to be so proactive about as a jurisdiction, because again, it's going to be something ongoing. We have to be just on top of what the latest requirements are to ensure that we comply with all that they're asking us for. I also think we would benefit from having an awareness campaign of sorts or representation around the world in different offices, so that we would have a liaison for the country so people can understand how strong our financial services are here in the Cayman Islands. But so definitely between those two things, that would definitely help us to definitely, mitigate against some of the negative press that came in, that isn't really warranted, and help us to, get off that list and stay off of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving from the international arena to a more local arena, what are your plans? This is for Mr. Eden to answer first. What are your plans to address the lack of facilities to attract more businesses into the Savannah area, including restaurants, ATM machines, and parks?
Thank you. One of the things that I think we need to do is we need to promote that Savannah is a family-oriented district. I think if people realize that it is a place for you to settle and to make a living, it is an alternate to the hustle and bustle of Georgetown. But to do that, what we need to do is to provide some incentives for businesses to establish. That may mean providing marketing support for businesses that are looking to establish. It may mean lower trade and business licensing fees, or maybe a waiver of the fees, at least until the businesses get established. When it comes to ATM machines, I think we probably need to look at having another bank be established in the constituency. At the moment, we have one, which is Cayman National Bank, but we can have additional ATM machines. Parks is something that is near and dear to my heart. I do believe we should have more parks and also more beaches as well. I've identified a few locations that I think will serve as a good location for an alternate public beach in the area. And when it comes to the parks, what we need to do is to encourage the use of those parks. We have the Pedro Castle, which I think should be made available to the public on an ongoing basis at little to no cost. We can have activities there that cater to the older generation, but at the same time, they get to interact with the younger generation to share some of their knowledge and expertise. We have the agriculture pavilion that is being underutilized at the moment. It gets used on Agriculture Day. We didn't have one this year, but I think going forward, utilizing the agriculture pavilion to encourage also farming on a smaller basis, but hopefully on a larger basis as well. So we do have those facilities. We need to utilize them, but we also need to create more of those and utilize them within the district.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
I believe more visibility as far as representation for Savannah is needed in general. Again, according to the constituents, they kind of feel like they're the district that time forgot. So just having some sort of visible representation, someone to speak on their behalf, let the rest of the island know how amazing Savannah is, because it's a little diamond in the rough out there that those of us that live out that way, we honestly have very little reason to come to town anymore. But there's so much room for in advancement. We have our own, center out there, the Countryside Shopping Center, Simboka and Chicken. So the ball is rolling in the right direction. And I think the more awareness that people know what's available in Savannah, that definitely will attract more businesses to come to Savannah. It's definitely gaining a lot of positive momentum, but just visible representation to let the people of the Cayman Islands know that Savannah is there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barton.
Thank you, Mike. I happen to live in that diamond in the rough that she's talking about. And I am so happy to be living in Savannah because, as everybody probably knows by now, it's one of the fastest growing communities. And right now, we probably pretty much have everything we need in Savannah. She touched on the park, and so did Malcolm. And we do have a park that's on the Pedro Castle Road that has been known by my family for many, many years. And for the last several months, we have been, doing a lot of volunteer work out there. And that is one of the necessities right now, is to provide a proper play field in our area. We have the bank. Like Malcolm said, we maybe need another bank. We have the grocery store. We have the restaurants. We have almost everything that's needed. But we definitely need a proper playground. And that is being worked on in the last couple of weeks by volunteers. We've been doing basketball competitions there. Lots of things have been going on. The church across the street has been involved with so many of their activities. They use it for their playground. The churches are using it for their summer months when they have the kids out, that they use it for their week of Bible school. So definitely, I would say that right now, the most necessary in our community thing that we need is a proper park. We need to get people on board. We need to bring people out who will be able to provide whatever is needed. We need a track. We need proper facilities for children to play on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Heather. All right. 10 questions down, several more to go. So please stay tuned. Right, come back with us. We're going to take a short break. Please stay tuned.
Behind everything we do is a promise. Better. Better because we care. Because we all have a common goal. To be better at cooking. To be better at eating right. And taking care of ourselves. To live in a better community. To just feel better. Today and tomorrow and the next day. Do it for you. Do it for them. Do it to prove something to yourself. Do it to carry on a family recipe. Or just because. But when you aim for the stars, better just works. We're Fosters. And we're better. Because of you. Because of them. Because of this place. And because we care.
Here in the Cayman Islands, the private sector is the prosperity engine that drives the country forward. Just like a real engine. The better we understand how it works, the better we can make it run, and the better off we'll be. To help illustrate how our economy works, let's take a step back in time to when there were only a few thousand people living in Cayman. In those days, most people survived by fishing or farming for food. It was a simple, wholesome life, but it was a lot of hard work. Most people bought what they needed from their neighbors. As people bought and sold things, their individual wealth went up or down, but the overall wealth of the country stayed the same. In a simple economy like this, the only way one person could increase their wealth was by reducing someone else's. In order to increase the overall wealth of the country, one of our Caymanian ancestors would have to sell something, a product or service, to someone somewhere else, and bring that money back home. In other words, we would have to export something. In those days, our biggest export was labor. Men worked overseas or on the seas. and brought the money home, thereby increasing the total wealth of the country. Although the economy is much bigger and more complex today, these same principles still apply. Every time a company in Cayman sells a product or service to a customer overseas, the overall wealth of the country increases. Once it's here, it flows around the local economy between the government, the people, and the companies and becomes a part of our society's wealth. The two biggest sources of income for our economy today are financial services and tourism, often called the pillars of our economy. Tourists come here and spend their money. So all of the tourism companies like hotels, restaurants, buses, Stingray City Tours that make sure our visitors have a great time are helping to increase the wealth of our country. Just like tourists, clients of financial services firms come here and spend money too. So all of our financial service companies like insurance companies, fund administrators, lawyers, and accountants that facilitate investment transactions for people and companies around the world bring money into the economy and increase the overall wealth. The point is, if we want to increase the prosperity of our country, the best way to do that, in fact, the only way to do that, is to grow the private sector. In particular, the companies at the front lines that bring the wealth here from overseas in the first place. In the next video, we'll talk a little about how money moves around the economy. For now, thanks for watching, and remember to share this video with your family and friends so they can learn more about our economic prosperity engine.
Welcome back to the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum for Savannah. Gone through the first 10 questions. Now we move on to the next 10, or fewer, depends on the candidates. And we'll deal with, the next issue is going to be reopening our borders.
Thank you, Will. And this will be addressed to Ms. Williams first. Yesterday, there was a government press briefing announcing a change in the quarantine protocol. What are your views on the current approach to reopening our borders?
I would agree with the process in which is being undertaken at the moment. I feel like it's being very carefully monitored and adjusted as the situation unfolds. And I definitely would agree with what's happening. I agree with the reduction of the quarantine time now that we have had such a large population of our elderly people. We've had them vaccinated. And as long as we can get more and more of our people vaccinated, I think that's the main objective for us all. But definitely I agree with the time for the quarantine being reduced, provided that people that are coming to the island have already been vaccinated. I feel like if they could be tested before they get here 24 hours, I think the current standard is 72. I would love to see that at 24 hours before they actually travel. And then upon arriving to the Cayman Islands, as long as they were tested again, I have no problem with the reduction of quarantine time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bodden.
Thank you, Mike. Generally, yes, but we must view what is happening outside. And our decisions have to be guided not just by what we've done, but what the other countries that are visiting have done. There is some risk, and I support opening once we take all the necessary consideration. The reduction of now from 14 to 10 days, I think that is the right decision. The government has done an excellent job with keeping our borders closed, and at least we can say that we are in a position where we don't have to wear a mask, but we don't want to ever hear again that we have to be shut down because of COVID or the pandemic stepping in again. So definitely I'm hoping and would welcome this very soon.
Thank you. Mr. Eden.
Thank you. I would agree with the approach that government is currently taking with regards to the reopening of the economy. As long as we can continue to receive the vaccines, I think on a regular basis, there is quite a bit of demand for the vaccine, so we need to ensure that we continue to maintain the supply. But having said that, what I've found is that there's still a reluctance of some in the community to take the vaccine. So I think what government should do is they need to encourage more of our residents to take the vaccine, but to do that, they also need to embark upon a public awareness campaign. There's some of the older generation that are stubborn, as we would say, and they're difficult. But I think a part of that process is educating them on the risks, but also on the other side of it, the safety with regards to the vaccine, because what we don't want to have is for a few cases to get into the community, and we know that it's a small community, so things can spread relatively quick. So what we don't want is for all of the hard work to be in vain. So while we are reducing the quarantine time frame and we are moving towards opening up the economy, we cannot move too quickly. Otherwise, all of the work that we've done over the past year will be nullified. So I think they are on the right track, and I think we are moving in the right direction, but we do have to proceed cautiously, especially as we start to reopen the economy.
Thank you. Our next question, Ms. Heather Bodden, I will address to you first, concerning the elderly. The elderly population in Savannah is increasing. What plans would you seek to implement to assist the elderly in your constituency?
The plans that I have to work with my elderly in Savannah are to make sure that they are comfortable and that they're well taken care of. Health insurance is definitely something that is of grave concern to our seniors. Cynical has to be revamped, and we need to make sure that our senior citizens have the proper insurance. Their pensions are not taking them through the length of time that they have. So definitely, right now, what I'm looking after as far as senior citizens will be their health insurance.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Eden.
Thank you. When it comes to the elderly, we cannot stress the fact that they've played a significant contribution to Cayman Islands and the development of our country. So I see them in a way as a national treasure. What we need to be doing is to find activities that will keep them engaged. Some of the ideas that I have in mind is more community activities, maybe at the Pedro Castle, at the Savannah Playfield, and to encourage them to come out into the community more. Some of them, while they may not be able to come out into the community, we can also have the younger generation go and spend time with them to share some of the stories. So we do need to look out for the elderly. One of the issues of concern is healthcare and health insurance. At that age, a lot of them are not able to afford health insurance, and some of them cannot afford the type of health insurance that they would like to have. I mean, Synico is okay, but it doesn't provide as much coverage as some of the other private insurance companies. So when it comes to the seniors, I think that government can provide more support for the seniors. And as I mentioned, activities in the community, I think would be beneficial, getting them out. They can share the knowledge of the meals that are prepared for families. I think a lot of that is being lost along the way. The younger generation are not knowing how to prepare some of the meals, and the traditional crafts are being lost. So I think we need to take advantage of that at this stage and have more activities where the younger generation and the older generation interact on a frequent basis.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Williams.
I also agree that with the elderly population in Savannah increasing, that healthcare is a major problem. That they definitely, I think we do need to go back to a healthcare system where it's actually free for them. They are the seniors of our society, again, and so definitely they deserve free health insurance. They shouldn't have to deal with, any thought about where their healthcare is coming from. It used to be that way. I don't know where along the line that dropped off, but it's very important that that is brought back, especially. That would literally just alleviate, a mental health issue for them, mental stress. They're aging, and the last thing they need to be worried about is health insurance. So definitely I would propose that they have free health insurance, and I would advocate that for them. I definitely think we need to ensure that Meals on Wheels, which is already a program in place, that they are regularly within our district to assist the elderly in Savannah. That would be of the utmost importance, and I would love to see that come through the Savannah office so that, I'm personally aware of that situation so that we can ensure that our elders are taken care of. And I also would love the feedback from their families to let us know what it is that they need. The open dialogue is going to be very important to find out what other needs that the elderly actually require and what they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to our next question, which will be addressed to Mr. Eden, is on the area of growth and its management. What is your view on the current level of population growth and development and the resultant impact on the country's infrastructure? Additionally, what measures would you recommend so that Caymanians benefit from a growing economy?
Thank you for that. When it comes to population growth, what we need to have is we need to identify what our targets are going to be and how do we intend to get there. It's pointless saying we have a target of 100,000 or 150,000 or 70,000. What we need is a strategic plan. What we need is an economic development plan. And then together with that, I think the population will grow according to what we've set out as our target rates for growth in the economy and for the population. Infrastructure, that's the biggest issue that we have because we've grown, but the infrastructure has not kept up with our level of growth. The roads infrastructure is inadequate. The way that we handle our public waste is inadequate. What we're finding is our electrical infrastructure, in my view, in some cases it needs to be looked at, and we need to encourage ways of more efficiently producing our electricity. And I said before that we are moving towards solar energy, but we need to encourage that. In terms of what I would recommend for Caymanians to benefit from the growing economy, at this stage we need to retool a lot of our younger Caymanians. At the moment, there's quite a few of them that are out of work. They were working in the tourism industry. Now is an appropriate time, a great time to retrain them. Those that want to learn more about construction, those that want to learn more about technology, those that want to learn more about arts and crafts, we should be encouraging them to, at this stage, learn more so that as the country grows and as we exit out of COVID-19, they're available to take on those jobs. And I think going forward, those are some of the strategies that we need to implement.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
My view on the current level of population growth and development, Cayman has developed so quickly over the last 40 years, and it continues to do so. And we do need to be cognizant of the impact on the infrastructure, particularly in all the ways of Caymanian employment and in all those areas as well. I would definitely recommend that, there needs to be a cap on the amount of people that Cayman, it's only 22 miles long. So to keep, adding population is going to obviously continue to put a burden on the infrastructure. So I definitely feel like it is something that at some point we do have to put a cap on, and to continuously add to the population is just going to obviously continue to stress the areas, the infrastructure of the country. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bodden.
Thank you, Mike. I think we just need to slow it down. I just think we need to slow it down a little bit. And we keep hearing about the increasing population of 100,000. And we need to strike a balance between development and the environment. And I'm not against anti-development, but we need to make sure that we're not losing our tomorrow for the gains of today that are not benefiting Caymanians. So I would just say, just slow it down a bit.
Thank you. Our next question, which I will address to Ms. Williams, refers to pensions and pension reform. Nearly $500 million has been withdrawn from private pension funds as part of the pandemic response. These withdrawals will impact the ability for many persons in our community to have enough funds for retirement. What would be your proposed solution to address this future shortfall?
Financial literacy. I think, generally speaking, people lack financial literacy in actually investing their own money. The pension is put in place for people to have something, but most people don't understand where their money's being invested, how much money they're making. And over the years, I think when we look at our bank statements when they come in, we often wonder how much money is my pension actually making me, because people just simply most people don't understand about investing. So I think honestly, education is key, and education of, again, financial literacy, investing, finding ways to invest your money. The pension is there, and I think it's a great idea, but I guess what I really feel is like the education of people understanding how to invest their own money is actually the way to build wealth. Learning about investing in stocks or cryptocurrency or in even real estate. These are all things that can be taught and can be used in addition, because now that the money is gone, there's got to be a way to build that back. And these avenues a lot of times are actually quicker than putting it back in the pension, only if people knew about them. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bodden.
I think what has happened is that people have gotten their hands on that money and they've just spent it and not realized that there is, need for that money down the road as well. So I think some financial education, somebody taking a lot of interest in just having some classes with some people, with some of those that have difficulty in how to invest and spend their money. I know for sure that a lot of people have taken that money and have purchased property, but then there's some that have wasted it. So definitely financial education needs to be put forward in this situation.
Thank you. Mr. Eden.
Thank you. I think what we need to do is we need a significant review or a comprehensive review of the pension regime. We need to do accurate forecasts in terms of what their projected returns of those pension funds are. And we need to look at where individuals will be when it comes to retirement age. I think building everyone's knowledge of finance, and I think financial literacy is key. I think when an individual realizes how to invest their own funds and how to conduct their budgets on a regular basis, they'll identify areas where they can set aside funds for savings. One way is to invest in a pension fund, but another way is to establish your own business and, in effect, chart your own path going forward to financial sustenance. And by doing that, individuals would take control of their finances, but it will take quite a bit of effort and education for us to work with individuals and with the population. The other idea that I had was for I guess I would call it a Cayman investment fund, which would allow for individuals that wanted to invest in real estate or other assets to get involved, but on a smaller scale. I think what we find is the idea of purchasing a property at today's prices is out of reach for many individuals. That's something that we'll probably address as well. But if they could participate on a smaller scale, so they could make an investment in a fund, and then at retirement they could redeem their funds, that would be another way to compensate for the loss of the resources when it comes to pension. So you would invest in the fund, you would get paid a dividend on an annual basis, and then after 5-10 years or whenever you want to redeem your money from the fund, it would be paid back to you.
Okay, thank you. My next question will be addressed to Ms. Heather Bodden, addresses the youth. What do you regard as the top 2 issues facing our youth of today, and how do you intend to address these concerns if elected?
There are several issues that are affecting our youth. Recently I've found that a lot of them are angry. They're angry because they're working and they're not making enough money to do what they need to do as far as buying property. I find that the youth have an issue with wanting to vote. We had many issues that we found that once we approached them to sign up, that they had an issue with that. They did not want to vote because they felt like nobody cared. So we are, this weekend, or actually tomorrow, we're doing a forum at on the lawn of Pedro Castle to talk to our youth, because a lot of them need to be involved in what is happening in our country. Some of them actually really don't care. But we're putting on this youth forum tomorrow at the Pedro Castle lawn, and that way any questions that they have that are of concern to them, they can let us know. So our youth is very important at this stage, and we need to hear them. We need to hear their voice. They need to be able to say to us, listen, this is my issue, and we need to act on what their problems are.
Thank you. Mr. Eden.
Thank you. For me, one of the issues is the lack of opportunities for the younger generation. A lot of the youth that I speak with coming out of school, they're not given the opportunities that some others are. And I think what we need to do is encourage a lot of our employers to give them a chance, give them an opportunity. Not everyone requires a qualification or a certificate. In fact, in my business, a lot of the people that I've hired over the past decades have not had qualifications. You know, they've just come to work with the right attitude and with the right approach. And I think what we need to do is just give them an opportunity and let them prove that they have what is required to take on most of the jobs in our community. The other issue that I think they're facing is a loss of identity. Cayman can be a very intimidating place to grow up in. We have a lot of different cultures. We have a lot of different nationalities. So what we need to do is, we need to work with them, and, we need to encourage them to have pride in their country, because Cayman is a beautiful place. It's a place that they can, raise a family, and they can actually make a respectable living. But we need to teach them to have pride in their country, and we need to teach them that, we are working in a very competitive environment, and we need to, we're competing on a global scale. So when they're competing for jobs, it's not just against other Caymanians, it's against everyone within the community. So I think working with them, giving them the opportunities that we know they're capable of, and also in doing that, helping them to build pride in their country.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
The top two issues that the youth are facing, according to my research that I've done, is they're fearful. They're fearful for their future, and they're fearful for the future, for future generations as well. They definitely feel like their voices don't matter. Mm-hmm. There is a major disconnect there. And again, when I was going door to door and speaking to the constituents of Savannah, it was very interesting to see that the parents were registered to vote and ready to vote. But a lot of the young people that I stood there talking to, they said, yes, I'm registered, but it doesn't make any sense. No one's going to listen to me. Nobody does anything different. No one makes any changes. So they're very disheartened. Mm-hmm. And they feel like they're not heard. And I think that's the biggest problem that we have today is, generally speaking, the youth do not feel heard. And they're really smart. If you ever sit down and listen and talk to them, they have so much to offer and so much knowledge and wisdom. I've learned so much from them, spending the time with them that I do. I have 2 children, and just the technology aspect alone is incredible. And I've learned everything that I know from my kids. So if we can give them a voice, that is what they need. That's what they want. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely would be my approach, is to continue listening to them and acting on what it is they want from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question will be addressed to Mr. Eden. and talks about the election process, and it's in the area of a coalition government. Many candidates in this year's election have identified themselves as independents. If elected, would you be prepared to join a coalition group or party? And additionally, what ministry or position in the new government would you want to fill based on your skills and qualifications?
Thank you. I'm actually one of those individuals that have campaigned on the platform of an independent candidate. Having said that, a lot of the other candidates that are running are known to me. The reason why I chose to run as an independent was because I believe that the principles that I stood for will not be compromised, and I've given that assurance to many of my constituents as well. But having said that, I've always been someone that has been able to work with individuals, and I've always been someone who has been able to accomplish things not just within the community, but as I represent the country as a whole. And it would be no different when it comes election day on the 14th of April. I think what I would want to see is what that government is comprised of. We're not sure whether it's going to be a particular party that's leading the government. We're not sure if it's going to be a group of independents. And at that stage, I would put myself forward as one of the leaders for any government that would be established. I believe with my background and qualifications, I could take on a number of ministries or positions within government. A few that are near and dear to my heart are financial services, anything in the arena of financial services, but also the environment and culture, and just looking out for the health and safety of and well-being of our people. I think we identified earlier that dealing with the landfill is a significant issue of concern for the country, and I would like to play a part in bringing some resolution to that issue.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
I'm an independent candidate for the District of Savannah. So therefore, if I was to join any government that's been formed after the election, I would definitely have to refer to my constituents first before I make that decision, before I join any government. Because it's, as an independent candidate, that's what I'm going in as, and I pride myself on taking the feedback of my constituents very seriously. So therefore, I would definitely have to refer to them before joining any government. But as long as they're okay with it and it's for the betterment of for the constituency, I would definitely go ahead and join whatever government as long as it's okay with them. Ministerial-wise, the health area is definitely my area of expertise. I have a lot of expertise in that area, health and fitness and wellness, and really in mental health now as a women's empowerment coach with my focus on mindset. Definitely, I would be a huge asset to the Ministry of Health. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bodden.
Thank you, Mike. There's 50 candidates running. I am an independent candidate. I'm only going to say that if elected, when that day comes, that we all have to decide where we're all going. Whatever has to be done, I will definitely work with whoever is in government for the betterment of our country. As far as a ministerial post, if that ever happened, it would have to be the Community Affairs Ministry. That's where my heart is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank the candidates. I think we've gone through 16 questions, which is a very good thing. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back after the short commercial breaks with further questions of the candidates.
Behind everything we do is a promise. Better. Better because we care, because we all have a common goal: to be better at cooking, to be better at eating right, and taking care of ourselves, to live in a better community, to just feel better. Today and tomorrow and the next day. Do it for you. Do it for them. Do it to prove something to yourself. Do it to carry on a family recipe. Or just because. But when you aim for the stars, better just works. We're Fosters. And we're better. Because of you, because of them, because of this place. And because we care.
In the last episode, we learned about the important role of companies here in Cayman that do business with overseas customers and generate new wealth for the Cayman Islands economy. But what about all the other companies in the Cayman Islands? How do they fit into our prosperity engine? Every business in the Cayman Islands falls into one of three groups, or tiers. Each tier plays a critical role in our economy. The first tier is made up of all the companies that do business with overseas customers and bring money into our economy. Companies in this tier are like the gas tank of our economic prosperity engine. The more we have in the tank, the farther we can go. Although most well-known companies in this tier are in financial services like Butterfield Bank or tourism like the Ritz-Carlton, there are many other well-known Tier 1 companies doing business with overseas customers like Unit Registry, Health City, and all of the companies in Cayman Enterprise City. The second tier of the economy is all the companies that do business with other local companies like IT and marketing consultants, or companies that sell supplies to bars and restaurants. These companies are also very important because without them, the companies they supply would need to buy their goods and services from overseas. So while companies in Tier 1 bring money into our economy, companies in Tier 2 help keep it here. The third tier is made up of all the companies that provide services to people that live and work in the Cayman Islands. Companies in this tier include supermarkets, dry cleaners, mechanics, gyms, doctors, dentists, architects, house builders, florists, and gardeners. These companies are important sources of employment and business opportunities for our people. And they play a really important role because without them, Cayman wouldn't be a very nice place to live. So to recap, Tier 1 companies do business with customers overseas. Tier 2 companies do business with other companies in Cayman. And Tier 3 companies do business with those who live here. Every company and self-employed contractor in the Cayman Islands falls into one of these three tiers, and they all play an important role in making our nation prosperous, helping bring money into our country, improve our economy, and creating jobs. And without them, the Cayman Islands wouldn't be the great country that it is. Thanks for watching, and remember to share this on social media so we can all help fuel the economic prosperity engine. When companies do well, everyone does well. Not just the business owners, but the employees, other businesses, the government, and even the customers. Seriously, to learn how, let's look at how money flows through a company. When a company sells its goods and services, they receive money, which is called revenue. That money is then split up and used in a number of different ways. Some of the money goes to employees. To keep it simple, we'll call this salaries. Some of the money goes to pay for products and services the company needs to keep running. Those expenses are called overheads. Some of the revenue goes to the government in duties and fees. And finally, any money left over goes to the owners of the business as profit. So no matter what products or services a company provides, it's like a machine that takes in money as revenue and spits money out as salaries, overheads, government fees, and profits. It's really that simple. Every dollar that a company takes in gets turned into one of those four things. Okay, so how does it benefit everyone when companies do well? Let's take a closer look. First, with salaries. Salaries are important for the economy because most people get most of their income from their employment. Next, government fees. In the Cayman Islands, the vast majority of the government's revenue comes from duties and fees paid by businesses. That money goes to pay for important government services like education, emergency services, healthcare, and infrastructure. Then we have overheads. Quite simply, one company's overhead is just another company's revenue. When a hotel needs supplies, they buy them from local suppliers. Those suppliers turn that revenue into salaries, overheads, duties and fees, and if they're lucky, profit. Some people think that business owners make too much money, but the truth is, the average company only makes 7.5 cents in profit for every dollar in sales. And that's assuming they make a profit at all. The other 92.5 cents goes to pay for salaries for staff, overheads that become revenue of other companies, and duties and fees that pay for the government services we need. In order to become successful, most business owners have to work extremely hard and take a lot of risks. If it wasn't for the ability to make a profit, the owner wouldn't have started the business in the first place. And if nobody started any businesses, there would be no jobs for employees, which means no salaries, no overheads to support other businesses, and no money from government fees to pay for our government services. So yeah, when companies do well, everyone does well. In the next video, we'll take a closer look at why countries need economic growth. For now, thanks for watching. And remember to share this video with your family and friends so they can learn more about our economic prosperity engine.
Welcome back to the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum for the constituency of Savannah. We've gone through several questions to the candidates. This will be the final round of questions. I'll turn it back over to President Mike Gibbs.
Thank you, Will. Our next question I will be addressing to Ms. Williams initially, and is relating to employment. What is your view about the Department of Work and the current priority that it's giving to employing Caymanians? Would you propose any changes to the current system? And if so, could you elaborate on that?
That's my view about work and the current priority of employing Caymanians. That's a good question. What is your view? I know how Caymanians don't feel like they're getting a fair shake in the employment area. So I would propose that there probably need to be some changes there. Enforcement of some laws I know that are in place to ensure that Caymanians get a fair shake at jobs. And that is a big complaint of Caymanians, that they feel like they're not getting that fair shake at job employment opportunities. So I would definitely believe that there are some changes that need to be made there. And I think the answer really does fall within enforcement of existing laws for Caymanians. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bodden.
Thank you, Mike. I totally agree. I sit in an office every day, and I have people that are unemployed come in to my office and tell me that they go on to the work site and they apply for job after job and they're not getting any responses. I know everything takes time, but I really, truly believe that Caymanians need to be looked after. I have so many of them that come into my office, and they could be filling the positions that others are filling through work permits. I totally agree that we need to have this, some sort of regulation put in place where the Caymanians are given the first preference. Definitely, they need to have work. They need to get work. They are appealing and they're writing and are dropping off their resumes every day to this organization, and they're complaining that they're not getting a response. So yes, I would highly recommend that this be revamped.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Eden.
Thank you. Work, in my view, is still relatively new. It came about as a result of the consolidation of a number of other governmental agencies. So it is relatively new. It needs to be given a bit of time. But I think going through COVID, it has exacerbated some of the issues that exist within our community. There's no doubt that there's lots and lots of Caymanians that are out of work at the moment, and we need to give priority to getting those Caymanians back to work. And of course, work plays a significant role in this process. So in my view, what we need to do is we need to do a review of work. We need to see if it is achieving the objectives for which it was set up. And if it's not achieving those objectives, then we need to move forward with recommendations to improve the processes and to achieve the end result, which is to get more Caymanians back to work. And we need to get that done with immediate priority, because one of the biggest issues facing our country at the moment is unemployment by our Caymanian people. So we need to find jobs for them. There's jobs that exist. There's jobs that exist within the community. But we need to make sure that our people are trained in such a way that they can take up those jobs.
Thank you. Our next question I will address to Ms. Heather Barden first is in relation to the recent enactment of the Civil Partnerships Act. And I would ask, what are your views on that particular act?
Well, we know the bill was not passed. The governor came back and exercised his power and implemented the Civil Partnership Law. And yes, I support it. But John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life." That means the whole world and everyone in it. Right now, we have bigger economic and quality of life issues, and we need to work on fixing those issues for everyone. I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eden.
Thank you. I was brought up in a Christian home. A lot of the foundations and values that I have came about because I grew up in that environment. And a lot of that is also reflected in our Constitution that says that we're a country built on Christian principles and values. Having spoken to quite a few members of our community, Cayman still holds as its foundation those Christian values. But having said that, me for one, I have a lot of friends, a lot of individuals that personally is impacted by the civil partnerships. In my view, I am accepting of the fact that it has been put in place. It has created a lot of divisiveness. But at the same time, I firmly believe that if that is what happens within someone's home, it's accepting. I think what we need to do is move beyond that. And I think that when it comes to building a country, we need to find a way that we can evolve, and we need to find a way that we can put aside the hard feelings and move forward and get on with the work of getting people back to employment.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
I'm a live and let live kind of girl. So as long as it doesn't hurt or affect me, hurt or affect my husband, hurt or affect my kids, it's perfectly fine with me. Everyone wants to be treated fairly, every single one of us. As far as the godly side of it, God is love. I'm not sure where all the negativity is coming from the sector in Cayman about that. I find that a little disappointing, to be honest, because at the end of the day, God is love and he loves everyone and he's the only judge. He's the one and only judge. So therefore, if laws are passed that don't, again, hurt anyone and is just giving people rights and being fair, that is no problem whatsoever to me. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question I will address to Mr. Eden relates to further another aspect of development. And do you believe that we can strike a balance between development and the environment? If yes, how would you attempt to achieve this balance?
I do believe that we can strike a balance between development and the environment. I think what we need to do in order to achieve this is we need to revisit our development plan. We need to identify what areas we want to develop in. And when I speak to development, I'm speaking not just in terms of developing buildings and homes, but also the infrastructure that goes along with that. And also, we spoke previously about transitioning away from fossil fuels to more environmentally friendly forms of energy production, such as solar. So in my view, it's all interconnected. I think we can have a good balance between the environment and between the development, but it's going to require a lot of dialogue. Some of the areas when it comes to the environment that need to be protected are our flora and fauna. Where there's a lot of areas that are being destroyed, whether it be the mangrove wetlands, whether it be native species of plants, but also what I've seen more recently is in terms of the fishes and the marine life, what we find is it's not given adequate protection, and that is one of the areas which a lot of people come to Cayman for, the beauty of our seas. So what would be the point of encouraging more tourism, overfishing, and things of that nature? So we do need to revisit our environmental laws, and we need to enforce them as well, because if we lose our marine and other attractions, then we're going to lose our tourism industry with it. So I do believe we can strike a balance. There's a number of projects that are being proposed, and we need to just make sure that at the same time, while we're creating jobs and employment, we're not destroying our environment.
Thank you. Ms. Williams.
It's going to take some work to make sure that we keep that balance. Right now, there's so much development going on the island. Again, walking through the district of Savannah at Christmas time and seeing all the flooding that is occurring as a result of the development of the roads, with no really deeper thought of how the impact would be on the residents that live there, you can see there's an imbalance. I also heard it last night in the debate last night for the prospect candidates. They had similar issues in the district there. So there needs to be more forethought before we can get some balance, because there's definitely an imbalance right now. It's causing a lot of issues. And obviously it's going to affect our natural resources, our mangroves, all of our natural protection, which keeps us safe from the hurricanes. You can't just keep developing. So reaching the balance is going to take a bit of a slowdown for you to look at this a bit, again, deeper than just where we're going to build this now. There definitely has to be some more conversation and plan, a deeper plan than what appears to be happening at the moment with the development of the island. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Heatherbottom.
Thank you, Mike. I am just going to say this. There's just too much concrete. We need to slow it down. Thank you.
I have to put my glasses on for the next question. Now, you didn't get. I was expecting a slightly longer answer there.
Well, they said it all, so I just wanted to add mine to it.
Okay, our final question for the evening, which will be addressed first to Ms. Williams, is in the potential introduction of a national lottery has been discussed for many years as a way of funding education and infrastructure. What is your view on introducing a national lottery?
Let's do it. It's a great idea. The money from a national lottery, as long as it's regulated, that is the main important part of it. If we implement it, it definitely has to be regulated. But the money from that can fund so many things. Healthcare for the elderly, free healthcare. It's just a great idea. I definitely would support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bodden.
I'm not in favor of a lottery. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Eden.
A national lottery, so that has come up on a number of occasions. In my view, before we can embark on such a significant decision, I would propose that we go to the public and that we carry out a national referendum, because issues such as that have lasting implications. I'm not saying that I'm not in favor of it, but I think what we need to do is take a close look at it and some of the issues that arise or that could arise, or the issues when it comes to a breakdown in the values and, what is it promoting in terms of, it's a lottery, but some people would look at it and say, are we gambling? Which I know it's not the same thing. So in my view, I think it's something that is worthy of consideration, but I'm not prepared to make a final decision on that just yet. It's something that requires a lot of attention, a lot of detail, a lot of discussion. We need to look at the pros and cons, and we need to see if at the end of the day it will actually result in something beneficial for the country, or is there another way that we can find ways to fund education and fund infrastructure other than a national lottery.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank the candidates. You've gone through 20 questions. Well done.
Thank you.
And right now we're going to take a short break. And when we return, each of the candidates will have closing statements. Please stay tuned.
Behind everything we do is a promise. Better. Better because we care, because we all have a common goal: to be better at cooking, to be better at eating right, and taking care of ourselves, to live in a better community, to just feel better. Today and tomorrow and the next day. Do it for you. Do it for them. Do it to prove something to yourself. Do it to carry on a family recipe. Or just because. But when you aim for the stars, better just works. We're Fosters. And we're better. Because of you, because of them, because of this place. And because we care.
Welcome back to the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum for the constituency of Savannah. We now reach the stage in the evening where we're going to have each candidate deliver a closing statement, and we'll begin as they were seated this evening with Mr. Malcolm Eden.
Thank you. Why does it begin and end with me? First of all, I would just like to say thank you to our host this evening. Thank you to the Chamber, but especially a big thank you to all of my supporters and all of my constituents for tuning in tonight just to hear a bit about myself and what I propose to do for your community. I trust that it's given you the confidence that you need to place your vote in the upcoming elections. I trust that you've heard some of the ideas that has come out from discussions with yourselves. We've discussed improvements with regards to the Savannah Primary School. We've discussed the roads infrastructure. We've discussed ways of encouraging development within the district. We've touched on maintaining our Caymanian culture. We've touched on what needs to be done to create employment opportunities within the district of Savannah. We also touched on the national issues, and I think the national issues fall hand in hand with some of the issues coming up in the district and within the constituency. So what I want to say is thank you for the time that you've taken to meet with me so far. When I launched my campaign to get to know me, I've reached out to a lot of you individually. I'm still working towards meeting as many as I can before the elections. But one thing and a question that I normally ask during my meetings for those who have not attended is what makes a country great? And in my view, it's our people. And it's people like you that have contributed to building the country that we have today. And going forward, when I am elected on the 14th of April, you guys will be there with me. I want you to rest assured that what I bring to the table is honesty, integrity, and accountability. So those are some of the things that you will see, that you will hear from me, and I don't intend to change that. I never have and I never will. So for those of you that have not personally met me before, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm available on social media. I'll come to your home. We can meet in the communities. But also just reach out to me on my cell phone. My number is 923-5538. I do have upcoming community meetings, upcoming public meetings. And what I would just like to leave you with is just go out and vote. I've spoken to a lot of constituents and they're undecided. They're not sure who they're going to vote for. But what I would say is just go out and vote. That is your democratic right. And at the end of the day, you can make a difference.
Well, thank you, Mr. Eden. Now, Gina Williams, for your closing remarks.
I'm here tonight as an independent candidate of Savannah, and my one main goal is to improve the quality of lives of the constituents of Savannah. And I've actually already started doing that. I'm super proud of the work that I have literally accomplished on the campaign trail, and that being that I assisted a Savannah constituent in actually getting a drainage system put in on her road. That single act of kindness changed her entire outlook on what a representative can be. I'm a person that if I see someone suffering, if I see a problem, I'm going to fix it. That's what I do, that's who I am, and that's the representative I will be. So on April 14th, you have a choice, and I ask that you choose Gina Williams as your next representative of the District of Savannah. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Now for the closing remarks, Heather Bodden.
Thank you, Will. Many thanks to the Chamber of Commerce and its panel. Thank you, Mike. I just want to end and say tonight in my closing remarks that I'm about rolling up my sleeves and getting the job done. So when you're considering who to vote for on April the 14th, I think it's important to look at the track record of each candidate. I'm happy to say that I am born and bred in the Newlands and Savannah community. I would ask that each of you remember my history of service to you, my people, and how over the years I've been at work to make things better. My office door is always open. I'm available 24/7. As we all look to the future, I would like to say to you, you know that I will continue to have your interest at heart and that I will listen to your desires for a better Cayman. I am here to serve you. My heart and my soul is in my community of Savannah. I thank you. God bless you. Good night.
Well, thank you again for the candidates. Again, you answered 20 questions. Very well done. So now I'll turn it over to President Mike Gibbs for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Will. Good evening once again. On behalf of the Chamber Council and staff, I would certainly like to thank the Savannah candidates for participating in this evening's forum. I trust that the forum will help the Savannah voters to determine who to vote for when you go to the polls on April the 14th. I would also like to thank Foster's for their major sponsorship of the Chamber's candidate forums, as well as Affinity, Bodden's Legal and Corporate, and DART. If you're interested in viewing more of the Growth Matters video series that have been playing during tonight's commercial breaks, they can be accessed at growthmatters.ky. Please join us tomorrow evening as we welcome the candidates from the constituency of Newlands, Roy Del Carter, Raul Gonzalez Jr., Wayne Panton, and Alva Saku. Thank you again for tuning in, and I hope you will join us tomorrow night at the same time. Good night.
Behind everything we do is a promise. Better. Better because we care.